What was the worst job interview you've had? At an interview for a tech startup, they asked me if you could be any animal, what would you be? I answered otter because fun, active, worked well with their hands and cute as frick. They really debated whether or not to hire me because of that answer because, and I quote, "we only hire predators, never prey," and they weren't sure how to quantify an otter, because none of them had ever paid the least bit of attention to any sort of animal documentary or read biology or visited a zoo recently. God, that job sucked hard. Otters are pretty brutal, they will absolutely frick crap up. Was invited for an IT helper position when I was 17. Would help fix computers for people at a shoddy PC fix shop. They asked me what's the first thing you check if a customer calls and says their screen doesn't turn on. I said, well, you gotta check if they have it plugged into a socket. They laughed and said thank you, that will be it. Then led me to the door and gently pushed me out. But that's the right answer. I drove 2 hours for the interview. Got there and the interviewer was off sick and hadn't told anyone about me coming in. Got back in my car and drove the 2 hours home. Withdrew my name from consideration. I drove an hour away to an interview at 8 AM. I waited outside the interviewer's office until 8:30 AM with no one to tell me where to go or where she was. Finally, another employee walks by and I ask if they know where this woman is to interview me. They had no idea where she was, why she was late, and told me if she wasn't there yet, I should leave because she probably forgot. Okay, I decide 45 minutes is a cutoff, especially standing in a government building looking like a creep waiting. 8:45 on the dot she rushes in, flustered, wet hair, and in casual yoga pants. With all the resurgence of patience I could muster, I greeted her and was met with a passive-aggressive scolding of how the interview was at 9, not 8. I triple checked the email asking me to interview and it was 8. We had conducted a phone interview and she followed up with an email request to an in-person interview at 8. I was 100% positive on this. I hate being late, even with this, and I did say, I'm certain you said 8 AM. Mom, she wasn't having it. Conversely, she also went on about why she was late. So mounting in, she went to the gym and forgot her underwear to change into and had to stop at a store and buy new ones after working out. Before coming to work, she told me this. In the first 5 minutes. Why? I didn't ask her. Regardless, she looks at my resume, apparently for the first time, because she proceeds to tell me how it is unimpressive and my graduate studies should have yielded numerous publications after 1.5 years. In my field, most don't publish until after 3-4 years. Even still, she kept saying how I had moved up the interview time, showed me the workspaces and told me I probably wouldn't be interested in what they do there. I politely told her I had driven, at her request, to be there and interview for employment. I was very interested. She waved me off. As we left, I just tried to hold it together. I was very poor and very desperate for a job. Thanked her, and she told me how great it is to work for the government, how good the benefits, the pension, the time off are, on and on. She said, if you can find an opening working for the government, you should try to check it out and get hired on. Hol up, I just looked her in the face and said, yes, Mom, that was my hope with today's interview. Thank you, and left, and sat in my car and bawled the whole drive home like the desperate loser I was. That was a low one, to be sure. Can't imagine somebody who has obtained a graduate's degree feeling like a loser. You have a random redditor who doesn't want to hear you talk about yourself like that. This story seems to imply you're incredibly smart with a good and honest heart. Be proud. The interviewer insisted on knowing why I'd left graduate school. Now, I had left graduate school because my advisor died in a car accident and the whole small department was thrown for a loop and no one seemed to know or care what was going to happen to me or my just started research project. The butthole interviewer wouldn't even accept my advisor died suddenly and dug into the gory details until I was almost in tears, even intimating that I must have had feelings for my advisor. I couldn't wait to get out of there and in my haste to leave I knocked some solutions off a cart, which had no business being in his office. BTW. On my way out, I'd never been so humiliated in my life. After that, I was sure I'd never get a job in science. Not that bad. But I remember Taco Bell asked me what type animal I would be if I could be anything. Like WTF do you want me to say? I would be a fire ant so I could work efficiently with my closest friends. 16-year-old me said an eagle because they're strong and they can fly. Men. 5 interview rounds with the last interview round being with the CEO, all for an entry-level customer service job. During the last interview, the CEO said you weren't allowed to get sick and you weren't allowed to leave at the end of the day until all of the work had been done. So even though the job was 8-4, the CEO said customer service reps often stayed until 6 PM or later. She also asked if I would be comfortable secretly reporting to her about what the customer service team is up to. I declined the job offer and the company harassed me with emails asking why and what they did wrong. Really glad I didn't take the job. Job was for a vibration analysis engineer. I knew how to do the job well. I knew the pay should be around 95k, and they stated 55k in the interview. When I tried to discuss my point, they said, "Don't worry, there's plenty of overtime." They also mentioned since they weren't involved with menu balancings at the moment, I would assist the cleaning crew with a lot of the cleanings. I've never been so uninterested in a job in my life. Vibrations analysis. Cleaning crew. That's a complicated way to say sex toy tester. An agency sent me for an interview and said the starting salary is £33,000. The interview went fairly well until the interviewer said, "So what sort of salary are you looking for?" So using the info I had from the agency I said, "Well, I think £33,000 is a fair starting point." The interviewer practically threw me out. He started to shout about wasting his time because I expected to be paid a huge salary, and who did I think I was? He was paying £20,000. Yeah, I have one that sticks out. I applied to a government branch as a network admin. The newspaper ad asked for a bachelor's degree. They called me into the interview. When I got there, the first thing the interviewer said was, "We wanted someone with a master's degree. Why did you apply?" Now, I wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they had other interviews that day and got them mixed up. Crap happens. I just informed the interviewer that the ad I applied for requested a bachelor's degree and confirmed the position I was interviewing for. No, we definitely wanted someone with a master's degree. So, again, why did you apply? If you wanted someone with a master's degree, why did you bother calling me in for an interview? You're very rude and unprofessional. Yeah, you fricked up at every junction thus far, but I'm the one who's rude and unprofessional. I always have the job posting description printed, with notes on it. Had similar comments a couple times and it's nice to have it right there. Once had an interviewer say, "I don't know where you got this. You posted it." I copy pasted. I drove an hour to be interviewed for a computer repair tech job at a rental company, and 3/4 of the way through the interview they told me I was perfect for the position. However, they recently removed the position altogether. They then asked if I'd be willing to repair furniture instead until the position opened again. When he said, "I'll give you extra hours if you bring me smokes every day," then put his hand on my leg and said his wife gives him passes to have fun. I also got a speeding ticket on the way to the interview. Was not my month. Would not have been surprised if you got a speeding ticket on the way home. Just not possible to get away from that crap fast enough. In a group interview, the interviewer crossed a line through my name on the list he had after I told him what I graduated in. This was within the first 5 minutes of a 40-minute meeting. The first question they asked was a statistics exam type question. Took me completely off guard. I half-assed the answer. A complete answer would have taken half an hour. The next question was about a Punnett square analysis. I answered honestly and said that the first thing I would do would be to look it up. Errors in Punnett squares are incredibly common, and I wouldn't trust anyone who said they could do it off the top of their head. I'd look it up even if I'd done one last week. They really didn't like that answer. They wanted to know where my husband worked and where we lived, and they concluded that our 6-month rental location was completely incompatible with the commute to their location. The whole thing was just super weird. It was like they sat down determined to find a reason they should not hire me. I was relieved to get out of there. As a nanny, you get some of the weirdest job interviews. It's not a professional HR rep. It's Lisa, who married her college boyfriend and works for her rich daddy. Most were just a little awkward with some inappropriate questions. Like, do you have a boyfriend or do you plan on having kids soon? One definitely stands out. I go to an interview for a family of an 16-month-old. Mom introduces herself and tells me we'll be interviewing in the nursery. I follow her in and there's only one chair, the rocking chair. She tells me to sit on the ground in a not so nice way. It became very clear that it was symbolic for how she treats the help. She wanted to literally look down on me. I sit down and she gets a toddler out of the crib, sits in the rocking chair and immediately starts breastfeeding. I've been around a lot of breastfeeding mamas so it wasn't that weird. But she took her top off, so she was pretty open about it. First thing she says, I hope you're okay with this because you'll be seeing a lot it. No real hello, how's it going? Or a question. Just, get used to seeing my tea. Then she tells me we'll be conducting the interview when she's done nursing. So for the next 15 minutes I'm just staring at her breastfeeding. Already super weird. The interview finally starts and it goes well. She's clearly a rich spoiled girl. Asks a million questions which is cool, including a couple weird ones. When she's done, I go, can I ask some questions? Her response is nope. Then she tells me she wants to see how I'll do with the kid. For the next 2 hours I follow her around and do what she tells me. I change diapers, give the kid a bath, fold baby clothes, put the kid down for a nap, even washed breast pump parts. And she's critiquing me on everything. She sends me on my way eventually. I actually thought I did really bad because she was angry a lot. Whatever, because I definitely did not want that job. A month later I get a phone call saying I've been hired. Starting tomorrow. I laughed out loud. I had apparently been the best candidate by far. Probably because I just took all her crap. She had even ordered me a work uniform. Which is ridiculous. I tell her I'm not accepting and she's livid. I got messages for the next 6 months telling me how horrible I am and that I betrayed her, and others telling me I can still take the job. Showed up looking good in my suit with a ton of knowledge on Capital Partners. It turned out I had researched the wrong company named Capital Partners. I interviewed for a project management position. The interviewer describes the job. Basically it was pure research and data entry of potential clients, then cold calling them and documenting the results. The job ad mentioned exactly none of this but was an average project management job ad, else I wouldn't have applied in the first place. I asked what exactly was the project management part and got told that could, not would, be down the road, maybe 2-5 years in, but really only maybe. I thanked them for the interview opportunity. We wrapped things up and I politely left. I went in to apply for an administrative assistant position and the guy kept asking me questions about liking kids and are my passports up to date, etc. I was so confused. Turns out what he really wanted was a nanny for his 2 young kids to travel with him and his wife back to India. I was so pissed he wasted my time. I noped right the frick out of there. If that's what he wanted, that's what he should have put in the job description. I'm sure he would have gotten plenty of qualified individuals to apply. Had a phone interview and the woman kept asking more and more intrusive questions. Kept hinting I'm a total piece of crap who's totally unfit for the job. It was the easiest job description ever, and jumping to conclusions about my life that were completely untrue. For example, I found out that being a freelancer who gets a lot of decently paid work each month is apparently living off my parents. She kept going on and on like that for quite a while before I told her to pee off and hung up. Didn't really need that job too badly, but it was in a different country so the travel aspect was the main reason. Years later I found out it was a stress interview, which apparently is a thing. Frick those people. Years later I found out it was a stress interview, which apparently is a thing. Frick those people. The only thing stress interviews and similar are good for is giving the person being interviewed a chance to recognize a toxic hellhole and run. Seriously, interviews are a two-way street. Pay attention to the red flags you see when you're interviewed. I had an interview with the MC back in the day. I don't remember the specifics other than I was really nervous. I had a "we are sorry to inform you" email waiting for me before I finished the 10-minute trip home. At an interview to be a county street sweeper, guy asks me if I have a girlfriend. Proceeds to rant for 5 minutes how young people don't get married anymore. Then he asks me what I want to avoid at the job. At the time I had no idea how to answer as I'd never been asked that in an interview before. So I ask him to clarify, to which he just repeats the question. over and over until he gets super angry that I don't know how to answer that, then asks me to leave. To this day, biggest WTF interview I've had. Maybe the correct answer would be cars and trees. Company was downsizing. All employees in a specific yet exclusive division were fired and ordered to reapply for their position plus 2 other jobs in the company. You'd either get one of those jobs or be terminated. The subsequent interviews were conducted with a manager and an hour person. First interview in executive suite. Manager asks, why aren't you applying for this key supervisory slot? I had listed it second on my list. Me. I would prefer to stay in my expertise in which I won a national award. HR. I didn't know awards like that existed. Second interview. Current boss likes me for my existing job, for which I was heavily recruited from another company. HR. Wow, so you're the guy who does this job? I had no idea a real person did it. Third interview. HR person says he's never heard of my division or that employees actually worked at night. I had listed this job in which I merely served as a minor manager as third on my preferences. Really didn't want it but had to list 3. The results. I was retained but transferred to the third dead-end day job. My old award-winning job was given to an aging staffer who never worked in that position or had a clue. The supervisor job went to a brilliant colleague who wanted and deserved it. I quit very soon thereafter and joined a bigger company with better benefits. Skill pays off. After all that, my old company, seeing the error of its ways in lost production and general lack of ability, offered me a bonus to return. Nope, 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 and I'm returning the corporate knife you stuck in my back. Background. My face tends to get really red when I'm stressed embarrassed. In a previous job, my company hired a consultant to help some of us improve our presentation skills. Consultant gave me some good advice. One of the weirder pieces of advice, however, was that if my face got red, I should flex my calf muscles because the flexing would divert blood away from my face into my legs. I had no idea if that was true or not, but it was weird enough that I remembered it. Job interview. About 10 years later, I'm giving a presentation at a job interview. I'm a scientist and giving a research presentation as part of a job interview is pretty common. My research was pretty good, but it had one critical flaw that I wanted to avoid discussing during my presentation. Somehow, everyone in the room locked in on the floor and directed a barrage of critical questions at me. I could feel my face starting to get red and all I could do was furiously flex my freaking calf muscles, which didn't do a damn thing. I didn't get the job. LOL. I have the same thing where I easily go very red, to the point where people have commented, geez, you are so red right now, as if I wasn't already acutely aware. Interviewer. Putting candy bars on the table to open the interview. Have a candy bar. Do you want Hershey's or Snickers? Me. Neither, thanks. I. Go ahead. Pick one. M. I don't want any candy now, thanks. I. Take one. Hershey's or Snickers? M. Okay, I'll take the Snickers. I. No, I want the Snickers. You take the Hershey's. M. No, thank you. Maybe they were trying to pull off some dumb butt power move stunt that they saw in some movie. I was interviewing for a job in Houston and lived in Austin, about 2.5 hours away. I drove to Houston for the first round of interviews, and they said it went well and wanted to bring me in for a final interview, so I drove there again. It seemed like it went well and they told me they had one more interview to conduct and would have a decision tomorrow. So the next day came and went. I emailed the manager to ask if any decision had been made. Nothing. Waited a couple more days. Left a voicemail. Nothing. Then a couple days later, I just called the main number for the company and told the receptionist why I was calling. She was like, well, someone just started in that job yesterday. They ghosted me after I drove a total of 10 hours to interview twice. Still salty about that 11 years later. That's fricked up. It's simple courtesy to send a thanks but no thanks to rejected applicants. An email at the very least. A call would be best. Speaking from experience of being on both sides of the table. Even 11 years later. Sorry dude. I interviewed for what was my dream job, something that I have a ton of experience in and 2 degrees, including one from literally the most prestigious school in my field. They liked me so much on my first few rounds of interviews that they asked me to fly across the country for the final one. So I go through easily the worst travel day of my life, arrive for my interview, and the interviewer takes one look at my resume and says, "I don't know why you came all the way out here. You aren't qualified for this." Suffice to say, I will never work there. Had an interview, went well. I was offering the job on the spot and accepted. The HR manager went to get the needed paperwork, came back 10 minutes later and said, "I must have forgot that we already filled this position. I'm sorry, but we don't have an opening. I could call you if something opens back up." I said no thank you. It was my best interview. Great rapport with the interviewer. Gave me the job on the spot. It for a transfer to QA at Johnson Control. Came into work the next day to have the offer rescinded. The job was already given to the plant manager's niece and it had only been posted because of company policy. The story is much longer and complicated afterward, but it was the first of several times I had been promoted different companies and then been told, "Never mind. You're making me feel better about being ghosted by that company for a similar position a few years ago," after what I thought was a successful interview. Had an interview at an office supply store once. Guy told me straight up it was a high pressure sales quota job. Their prices on computers and peripherals were crap and that's what I'd be selling. Dude straight up said it's a lot of work for low pay. Not a lot of people enjoy working there. And he finished off with the fact that he's been there for 18 years. Practically ran out of that interview screaming. Well, can't fault his honesty. If only more interviewers were like that. Bit of context. This happened in 2008 and I had just graduated as a massage therapist. Since the economy was in the pits due to the recession, glad this never happened again, haha. MTs were not exactly in high demand so employers could be picky. The only reason I was even considered for most of my interviews was because I graduated from an accredited school. A lot of the places I interviewed at would turn me down pretty quickly since I didn't have either 10 plus years experience or the body of a supermodel with a massive rack. I'm 100% serious. BTW. Easily the worst experience was at a chiropractor who did absolutely nothing to hide his contempt for massage therapists. He showed up late, went into his office to check his mail first and then proceeded to have the interview with me in his waiting room. He knew he could pick any MT he wanted and gave zero fricks about how I felt. When it finally got on the subject of pay, he offered me minimum wage. At the time, your average MT was paid about $20 to $30 an hour and I was already working a dead-end job at a gas station making $2 more than what he was offering. I brought up how absurdly low his offer was and he balked, saying that I would be paid as if I was working 40 hours a week so it would even out. He also clarified that I would be expected to clean the office when not seeing a client so I'd also be an underpaid janitor as well. Frick that guy. Also a LMT, graduated in 09. I interviewed with a Chiro where a staff member gave me a tour, then took me to the DR practice owner. He offered me the job at an absurdly low rate without asking me a single question. I couldn't run away fast enough. I had a Skype interview with a private practice and the lady interviewing me literally made it sound like a stern military parent. You can never be late. Mind you, the job was an hour away. Even if you have a cold you can never call in sick. IDK if this was meant for pre or post COVID. We're a small company so you won't have much of a work-life balance. PS our pay for all this dedication is only $3 more than the measly pay you're getting now. Just a whole interview of red flags. And the last one was when the lady messaged me immediately after saying I got the job and had to leave my job at maximum 5 days notice, regardless of me kind of bombing the interview and claiming there were other interviewees in line. I could see why they were having trouble hiring people tbh. Started as the worst and ended as the best. The beginning started like this. I'm so sorry to have to inform you of this, but we pulled the wrong resume contact information. We didn't mean to call you in for an interview. Before leaving, the interviewer gave me a brief tour of the company grounds because they felt so bad for wasting my time. They introduced me to the department head that I would have been working for if that department was actually hiring. I had a great conversation and the department head was convinced that I would be an asset to them, and they hired me on the spot. I had something similar to this but not as good of an ending. I got an email asking to do an interview for a company, but it was addressing somebody else. They were emailing me when they meant to email somebody else. Tried play it off like I didn't notice and thought maybe they'd be cool about it and let me come in for an interview anyways. They weren't having it. I applied for an internship at a human rights law office. They gave me questions on the spot to debate with them, like should people accused of rape remain anonymous until convicted, and is bribery acceptable if it's for a good cause. It was me versus a panel of 5 senior human rights lawyers for a whole hour, who just ripped me apart from start to finish. Everything I said, they made sound like the dumbest response with their rebuttals. By the end I was a nervous babbling wreck. Did not get the internship, but did appreciate the experience in retrospect. When they got back to me, they told me your CV, resume, was fantastic, so we were quite disappointed with how poor your interview was. Burn. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.